My phone buzzed on the polished obsidian table. Stuck at Mom's for dinner. Love you. The text was innocent. The man sending it was not. I looked up. He sat 3 tables away. He was not at his mother's house. Instead, he occupied a booth across from a woman in a backless red dress, sliding a heavy cream envelope toward her. It was sealed with red wax. It looked archaic. It looked like a treaty. I watched him whisper something to her, a look of desperation in his eyes. I did not scream. I picked up my phone. I typed, "Enjoy dinner with Mom." I hit send. I watched him check his phone. I saw his shoulders relax. He thought he was safe. He thought I was the same blind wife who had paid his debts for 5 years. I typed 3 more words. "Check your accounts." Then I stood up, left my $35 scotch unfinished, and walked out into the night. Before we descend into the wreckage of my marriage, drop a comment below. What time is it where you are right now? And have you ever had a gut feeling that saved your life? Let me know in the comments. I did not drive to our house in the suburbs. That house was a crime scene of wasted years and invisible labor. I drove straight to the Four Seasons downtown. I paid cash for a corner suite. I needed neutral ground. I needed a fortress. When the door clicked shut behind me, engaging the heavy deadbolt, I did not throw myself on the bed and weep. I did not call my mother, because I do not have one. I sat at the glass desk, opened my laptop, and initiated what we in the industry call a zero-day protocol. In cybersecurity, a zero-day exploit is a vulnerability discovered by hackers before the vendor knows it exists. You have 0 days to fix it. My marriage was the vendor, Justin was the hacker, and I had been running unsecured software for 5 years. I turned off the part of my brain that remembered the way he used to brush the hair out of my eyes. That woman was a liability. I activated the chief financial officer. I started with the joint accounts. Initiating the sequence took seconds. My fingers flew across the keys, moving faster than the shock could settle in my veins. 50% of our liquid assets went into a secure holding account he could not touch. Next came the credit freeze. I put a lock on our reports across all 3 bureaus. He thought he was having a romantic dinner with a woman in a red dress. He did not realize that by the time the check came, his cards would decline. He was about to find out that he was not the breadwinner. He was barely the bread. Then I dug deeper. I pulled the transaction history for the last 12 months. I ran a search for recurring payments. There it was, $3,500 transferred on the 15th of every month to a crypto wallet. The recipient was listed as Sterling Bridge Ventures. I copied the LLC name. I pasted it into the state registry. It was registered 6 months ago. The agent was a generic service, but the mailing address was a post office box in the same strip mall where Justin claimed his consulting firm rented office space. He was not just cheating. He was siphoning marital assets to build an escape pod. I stared at the glowing screen, the blue light reflecting in my eyes. I should have been surprised, but looking at the numbers, I realized I wasn't. I was a survivor of the foster care system. I grew up with state-issued shoes and a trash bag for a suitcase. I learned before I could read that money is not just currency. Money is oxygen. If you control the money, you control your survival. Justin grew up in a cul-de-sac with a golden retriever and a college fund. He never understood the panic of an empty fridge. He thought money was something that just happened, like rain. I had spent our entire marriage shielding him from reality. When his architecture firm failed, I called it a market correction. When he couldn't pay the rent on his studio, I paid it and called it an investment in his genius. I had created a scholarship for his ego. That is how it happens. It is the parable of the frog in boiling water. If you throw a frog in a pot of boiling water, it jumps out. But if you put it in tepid water and turn up the heat slowly, it cooks to death without ever knowing it is dying. Justin didn't start by stealing thousands. It started small. He forgot his wallet on our first anniversary. Then he asked me to cover the utilities just this once. Then he stopped asking about my day. Then came the text I received an hour ago. Ordered that Thai place you love. He wasn't ordering dinner for me. He was throwing scraps to the dog so it wouldn't bark while he robbed the house. He thought I was the frog. He thought I was cooking nicely in the pot of domestic blindness. He forgot that before I was a wife, I was a girl who had to hide her lunch money in her socks so the older kids wouldn't steal it. I looked at the balance on the screen. I was done being the scholarship fund. I closed the tab on our bank account and opened a new terminal. It was time to find out exactly what Sterling Bridge Ventures was selling. Justin walked through the door at 9:14 in the morning. He did not look like a man coming home to his wife. He looked like a man coming back to a crime scene to make sure he hadn't left any fingerprints. He was still wearing the navy blazer from the night before, but his tie was loosened and his eyes were red-rimmed. He carried the scent of stale espresso and expensive perfume, the kind that lingers in the Obsidian Lounge long after the bill is paid. I occupied the armchair by the window, my laptop closed on the table next to me. I did not stand up. I did not ask where he had been. I simply waited. He stopped in the entryway, feigning shock that I was awake. He ran a hand through his hair, a calculated gesture of exhaustion designed to elicit sympathy. "I was so worried about you," he said. His voice was thick with performative concern. "I texted you. Mom had an episode." Her heart again. "I spent the whole night at the hospital waiting room." It was a lazy lie. His mother lived in a condo in Sarasota, 1,000 miles away. But he knew that I, the girl who grew up with no parents, had a soft spot for family emergencies. He was weaponizing my trauma to cover his tracks. "Is she okay?" I asked. My voice was flat. I wasn't asking because I cared. I was asking to see how far he would take it. "She's stable," he said, walking further into the room. He didn't come to kiss me. He didn't ask why I wasn't at work. His eyes were darting around the room, scanning surfaces. "I met a specialist there, a cardiologist." "That woman you saw me with? The one in red?" "She's a medical consultant." We were discussing Mom's treatment options. "It wasn't what it looked like, Sam. You know I would never do that to us." He was gaslighting me with the confidence of a man who had never been told no. He was trying to rewrite reality in real time. But looking at him now, I didn't feel the sting of betrayal. I felt the cold detachment of an auditor finding a discrepancy in a ledger. He was a bad asset, and I was about to liquidate him. He walked past me toward the kitchen, then stopped. He turned back, his eyes landing on my laptop. "Actually, can I use your computer for a second?" he asked. "My phone died, and I need to email the doctor's office before they close for lunch." There it was, the breach attempt. He didn't care about the doctor. He needed access. He needed to log into the accounts I had frozen, or perhaps check if the data transfer from the night before had completed successfully. "Go ahead," I said. He sat down and opened the lid. The screen woke up. He typed in his usual passcode, the one I had shared with him 3 years ago because we were partners. Because we had no secrets. The screen shook. "Incorrect. Password." He frowned. He typed it again, harder this time. "Incorrect password." He froze. The frantic energy that had been buzzing under his skin suddenly spiked. He turned to look at me, his smile vanishing. "Sam, did you change the password?" "I did," I said. "Standard security update. Company policy. I need to send this email," he snapped. His voice rose an octave. "Just tell me the new one." "I can't," I said calmly. "It's biometric now, and I am logged out for the weekend." He stared at me. For a second, the mask slipped completely. I saw pure, unadulterated panic. He stood up, slamming the laptop shut. "You are so controlling," he shouted. "This is exactly what I was talking about. You lock everything down. You treat this marriage like a corporation. My mother is sick, Samantha, and you're playing games with passwords? You're cold. You are ice cold." He was pacing now, pulling at his hair. He was projecting. He was the one who had locked me out of his life, but he was accusing me of hiding the key. He wasn't angry because I was cold. He was terrified because I was competent. "I'm going to shower," he spat, turning toward the bedroom. "Don't bother waiting for me." I watched him go. I listened to the bedroom door slam. He was terrified. He hadn't been able to check the transfer. He hadn't been able to scrub the history. He was flying blind. I picked up my tea. It was still warm. He thought he was punishing me with his silence. He didn't realize that every word he said was just another line of code in the program I was writing to destroy him. I didn't stay to listen to the shower run. I left the hotel key card on the table, a subtle breadcrumb, and walked out. I had a meeting that couldn't happen indoors. Brandon Cole agreed to meet me at a server farm on the outskirts of the city. It was the kind of place that didn't exist on casual maps, a nondescript gray warehouse surrounded by barbed wire and humming with the sound of 10,000 cooling fans. It was loud, sterile, and the only place Brandon felt safe. He was waiting for me by the loading dock. Brandon was the opposite of Justin. Where Justin was polished charm and hollow promises, Brandon was frayed edges and raw intelligence. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He was Tiffany's fiancé, a cybersecurity analyst who thought he was marrying the love of his life next June. Instead, he was standing in the wind with a woman he barely knew, holding the smoking gun that would end both our relationships. "Did you bring the logs?" he asked. He didn't say hello. He didn't shake my hand. I handed him the flash drive. Everything from the last 6 months. Router traffic, device connections, upload histories. If it went through my Wi-Fi, it's on there. Brandon plugged the drive into his ruggedized laptop. He sat on a concrete block, typing furiously. I watched his face. I saw the moment hope died. His shoulders slumped. He stopped typing and just stared at the scrolling text. "You were right," he whispered. "Tell me," I said. He turned the screen toward me. Packet sniffing confirms it. There's a massive data exfiltration event. 3 gigabytes of encrypted files. The upload destination is a secure server in the Caymans. "What files?" I asked, though I already felt the sickness rising in my throat. "Proprietary schematics," Brandon said. "Specifically, a folder labeled Project Aethelgard. It looks like biotech research. Patents. Clinical trial data. Sam, this is worth millions. Project Aethelgard. My company's flagship project. The breakthrough we had been working on for 5 years. If this leaked to a competitor, our stock would tank overnight. The company would be ruined. And since the leak came from my IP address, I would be the one going to federal prison. It wasn't just data," Brandon continued, his voice trembling. "I traced the payment. The shell company, Sterling Bridge Ventures, it received a wire transfer of $50,000 the day after the upload. And look at this." He pointed to a second line of code. "Recurring crypto transfers. $3,500 a month. From the Sterling Bridge wallet directly to a cold storage wallet registered to a user named T-Chen88. Tiffany Chen. She's the bagman," Brandon said, closing his eyes. "She's laundering the money. Justin steals the data, sends it to the buyer pays the shell company, and the shell company pays Tiffany. And Justin gets his cut?" I asked. "Justin gets the glory," Brandon said bitterly. "Or maybe he just gets to feel important for once. But Sam, the buyer, the IP address for the Cayman server, it bounced through 3 proxies, but I caught the origin ping." He looked up at me, and his eyes were full of fear. It originated from a private terminal. The MAC address matches a device registered to Richard Sterling. The world tilted on its axis. Richard Sterling, my CEO, my mentor, the man who hired me out of obscurity and taught me everything I knew about corporate finance. He wasn't just the victim of the theft, he was the architect. He was stealing from his own company, shorting the stock before the leak went public, and using my husband to do the dirty work. And when the dust settled, he would be rich, the company would be gutted, and I would be the negligent CFO who let it happen. I looked at the gray walls of the data center. The hum of the fans sounded like a countdown. "We need to move," I said. "If Richard is involved, this isn't just theft anymore. It's a conspiracy. And I am the loose end they are planning to cut." Brandon nodded. He pulled the flash drive out and handed it back to me. It felt heavier now. It wasn't just data. It was evidence. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I'm going to initiate a hostile takeover," I said, "of my own life." I sat in my car outside the warehouse, the flash drive burning a hole in my pocket. The rain had started, blurring the world into streaks of gray and steel. I needed to think. I needed to verify the timeline. I opened my laptop and pulled up the forensic report Brandon had generated. I scrolled to the timestamp of the data exfiltration. Tuesday, 3:14 in the morning. Tuesday. I closed my eyes and let the memory of that night wash over me. I had come home late, exhausted from a board meeting. Justin had been unusually attentive. He had drawn me a bath. He had made me tea Earl Grey with a hint of honey, just the way I liked it. "You work too hard, Sam," he had said, placing the mug in my hands. "Drink this. It'll help you sleep." I drank it. I remembered the taste slightly bitter, masked by the sweetness. I remembered feeling heavy within 20 minutes. My limbs had turned to lead. I had stumbled to bed, barely able to undress. I had fallen into a deep, black, dreamless sleep. I looked at the report again. Authentication method, biometric Face ID. He hadn't guessed my password. He hadn't hacked the mainframe. He had drugged his wife, waited until she was unconscious, and then held her own phone up to her sleeping face to unlock the kingdom. It was a violation so intimate, so physical, that it made my skin crawl. He had used my body as a key. A cold rage settled in my chest, replacing the fear. This wasn't just corporate espionage. This was assault. My eyes scanned the second part of the report, the connection to Richard Sterling. My mentor. The man who had sent me a fruit basket when I had the flu. The man who had called me the future of this company. He was betting against that future. He was shorting the stock. He knew the leak would drive the share price down, and he planned to buy it back for pennies on the dollar, making millions in the process. And he needed a scapegoat. Who better than the CFO? The woman responsible for data security. The woman whose husband was the one leaking the files. It was perfect. If I got caught, they would say I was in on it. They would say Justin and I were partners. Or worse, Justin would claim he was innocent and that I was the mastermind, using him as a pawn. I realized then that the wax-sealed envelope wasn't just a theatrical prop. It was likely an indemnification agreement. Justin was probably trying to get me to sign something maybe disguised as a tax document or a loan application that would legally shift liability onto me. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Justin. "Baby, I'm sorry about this morning. I'm just stressed about Mom. Let's talk. I made dinner. Please come home." He was trying to lure me back. He needed me in the house. He needed me compliant. He probably had the document ready to sign tonight. I stared at the message. He thought he was playing chess. He didn't realize I had already flipped the board. I started the engine. I wasn't going home to eat his apology dinner. I was going to war. But first, I needed to make a stop. I drove to a 24-hour clinic and requested a toxicology screen. I told them I suspected I had been drugged. They drew the blood. Then I drove to the office of the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. Her name was Diane, but everyone called her the Shark. I didn't have an appointment, but when I told the receptionist I had evidence of a CEO defrauding a public company, Diane came out to the lobby herself. "I need a mediation meeting," I told her. "Tomorrow morning. I want Justin there, and I want him to think he's winning." Diane looked at the file I handed her. She looked at the toxicology receipt. A slow, terrifying smile spread across her face. "He won't know what hit him," she said. The conference room smelled of lemon polish and impending doom. Justin sat across the mahogany table, looking appropriately somber. He had brought a lawyer, a man named Caleb, who wore a suit that cost less than my briefcase. They looked like two vultures circling a carcass, unaware the carcass was still breathing and holding a shotgun. "Sam," Justin started, his voice dripping with rehearsed sadness. "We don't have to do this with lawyers. We can just talk." "We are talking," I said. I sat perfectly still. My hands were folded on the table. My face was a mask of granite. This was the gray rock method. Be boring, be unreactive, give the narcissist nothing to feed on. My client is heartbroken, Caleb interjected, puffing up his chest. But he is also practical. He has debts. The failure of his architecture firm left him with significant liabilities. He is willing to settle quickly for a lump sum of $75,000. In exchange, he will sign the divorce papers today. $75,000. The exact amount needed to buy into the crypto scheme Brandon had uncovered. He wasn't paying debts. He was buying his ticket to the Caymans. $75,000 is a lot, Diane said, playing her part. Especially considering he has contributed nothing to the household finances for 3 years. I supported her emotional well-being. Justin snapped, his mask slipping. I managed the home so she could be the big-shot CFO. I deserve a return on my investment. Investment. He used the word without irony. Fine, I said. The room went silent. Justin blinked. What? I will pay the $75,000, I said calmly. But I have a condition. I slid a single sheet of paper across the table. I need to protect my professional license. This is an affidavit stating that I, Samantha Hayes, have absolutely no knowledge of, involvement in, or financial interest in any entities known as Sterling Bridge Ventures, or any associated accounts. It certifies that any business dealings you have conducted under that name are yours and yours alone. Justin looked at the paper. He looked at Caleb. He was trying to hide his excitement. This was exactly what he wanted to keep his shell company secret. He thought I was being paranoid about my CPA license. He didn't know I was handing him a shovel to dig his own grave. That's standard, Caleb said, shrugging. Sign it, Justin. Justin picked up the pen. He looked at me one last time, a smirk touching the corners of his mouth. You always were obsessed with paperwork, Sam. He signed it. The scratch of the pen sounded like a guillotine blade dropping. Done, he said, sliding it back. Where's the check? I picked up the affidavit. I checked the signature. It was valid. I placed it carefully into my folder. Then I looked up. There is no check, Justin. Excuse me? Caleb stood up. We have a confession, I corrected. I pulled out the second document, the one Brandon had found. This affidavit you just signed contains an indemnification clause. By claiming sole ownership of Sterling Bridge Ventures, you have just admitted to being the sole beneficiary of the illegal sale of stolen intellectual property from my company. Justin's face went white. What are you talking about? Project Aethelgard, I said softly. The data you stole from my laptop while I was drugged on Tuesday night. I threw the toxicology report on the table. Then the IP logs. Then the photos of him and Tiffany. I know about the drugs, Justin. I know about the Face ID bypass. I know about Richard Sterling. And thanks to this paper you just signed, you can't claim I was your partner. You just legally certified that you acted alone. Justin stood up, knocking his chair over. You can't prove that. Richard will protect me. Richard is currently being escorted out of his office by the FBI, I lied. It wasn't true yet. But Justin didn't know that. I sent the file to the board 10 minutes ago. Richard is going to claim he barely knew you. He's going to say you're a rogue contractor who stole the data, and you just signed the paper proving him right. Justin looked at the door. He looked at me. The arrogance was gone. All that was left was the terrified boy who used to forget his wallet. Sam, please, he whispered. I can fix this. We can leave. I looked at him. I felt nothing. No anger. No love. Just the satisfaction of a balanced equation. I'm not going anywhere, Justin, I said. But you are. The door opened. 2 security guards stepped in. Mr. Miller? One said. We need you to come with us. The police are waiting in the lobby. Justin screamed my name as they dragged him out. I didn't watch him go. I picked up my pen and drew a line through his name on my notepad. Asset liquidated. The fallout was efficient. When the board of directors received the file I sent, they didn't ask for explanations. They asked for damage control. Richard Sterling was removed from the CEO position before the market closed that day. The official press release cited health reasons, but the federal indictment that followed a week later told a different story. Justin and Tiffany turned on each other with the speed of rats on a burning ship. Tiffany took a plea deal, testifying that Justin was the mastermind who manipulated her. Justin tried to claim he was a victim of coercion, but the affidavit he signed in that conference room, the one where he claimed sole ownership of the shell company, sealed his fate. He traded his freedom for a plea bargain that barely shaved 2 years off a 10-year sentence. He wanted to be an architect. Now, he would spend the next decade designing nothing but his own regrets in a 6x8 cell. I didn't stay to watch the trial. I accepted the transfer to the Chicago office. They offered me a 20% raise and a relocation package, calling it a retention bonus. I called it hazard pay. My new apartment overlooks Lake Michigan. It is currently minus 10 degrees outside. The wind howls against the glass, but inside, it is quiet. The walls are white. The furniture is sparse. There are no ghosts here. There are no whispers of stuck-at moms, or the smell of betrayal masking itself as tea. I sat on the floor of the living room and opened my new laptop. I initiated the setup process. When it asked for biometric security, I scanned my face. This time, I was awake. This time, I was the only one holding the key. I opened my cloud storage. There was one folder left to migrate. It was labeled Wedding. 4 gigabytes of smiling faces, white lace, and promises that had expired long before the ink on the license was dry. I didn't open the folder. I didn't look at the photos to reminisce or to cry over what was lost. In accounting, when an asset has no future economic value, you write it off. You remove it from the balance sheet so it doesn't skew the numbers. I selected the folder. I pressed delete. The system asked for confirmation. Are you sure you want to permanently delete these items? I didn't hesitate. I clicked yes. The progress bar flashed for a second, and then it was gone. The folder vanished. The drive showed 100% available space. I stood up and walked to the window. The city lights reflected on the dark water of the lake. I was alone in a frozen city. I had no husband. I had no mentor. But for the first time in 5 years, my assets exceeded my liabilities. I was solvent, and that was enough. If you believe that competence is the best revenge, hit that like button and share this story with someone who needs to wake up. And tell me in the comments, would you have signed the check or sent him to jail? I'll see you in the next one.